A pleasant good night to you. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, and welcome to another edition of The People's Business. I'm your host, Shane Keely, and tonight we're focusing on agriculture. And it's all about agriculture and those cost-cutting measures that can be employed at the level of the farmer. And we have the experts in to see how we can help our farmers do just that, hoping that a lot of these increasing prices will not be passed on to the consumer. So tonight we have Keely Holder in the house. She's the Chief Agricultural Officer. Along with her is James Paul, the Chief Executive Officer of the Barbados Agricultural Society. And we have a company offering some solutions. Julieann Johnson is representing them, the Public Relations Officer for ProK. So stick around. We'll see if we can find solutions on tonight's edition of The People's Business to these rises in prices across the board. Hopefully, we can find those answers and that these increases will not be passed on to you, the consumer. We will be back in a moment. Welcome back to this edition of The People's Business as we focus on agriculture and cost cutting at the level of the farmer. On May 3rd, that was Tuesday gone, it was announced that Pinnacle Feeds, well, it was announced before that, but that was the day that Pinnacle Feeds officially raised its prices by around 8%. There's an automatic reaction, which would be that farmers purchasing the feed will now have to find a way to recoup that extra money that they're paying for the feed. So that is normally passed on to the consumer. But what if we can find a solution that farmers would hopefully save on feed? And this is just one of the points that we will be touching on tonight, because prices are rising across the board. And a lot of it is related to, believe it or not, what is happening in Ukraine. That is what the release coming from Pinnacle Feeds Limited said, that the increase in the price of feed related to grain, and Russia and Ukraine being one of the largest producers of grain in the world, they had no choice but to take the price of feed to another level, 8% more. So we're going to try to get some answers to see how we can help farmers tonight. Or is it inevitable that consumers will be paying more for meat, poultry, and other products? So we have Keely Holder. She is the Chief Agricultural Officer, and I'll let her lead our discussions or our talks tonight as we try to find some solutions. I'm pretty sure that farmers have been calling the Ministry of Agriculture, Keely, trying to find out what can they do, get some sort of help. And for some of them, it may be like on their last line, because things are difficult for everyone. We're in the pandemic, and now the war in Ukraine, and another increase in the price of feed coming from the major supplier here in Barbados, which is Pinnacle Feeds. What has the feedback been like from farmers as you've been speaking to them? What have you been hearing?
Good night, Shane. Good night, listeners, viewers. And I'd like to say Happy Mother's Day to all mothers and to my mom and all my other moms. As it relates to the rise in prices, I think since last year, since we saw the increase in prices with Pinnacle feeds from around last May, um, livestock farmers certainly have been bracing for more increases. At the time, you would recall that the government of Barbados was able to provide some price support for the farmers specifically, to alleviate some of the issues at that point. But obviously, that wasn't a sustainable option. Coming out of that, one of the discussions was to look and see how we could assist farmers specifically with lowering their cost of inputs, because obviously, the smaller that you are as a farmer, it means the higher your cost of production is going to be. Farmers benefit significantly from economies of scale, and especially farmers in large countries. So, Barbadian farmers do struggle to be competitive, particularly with something like feed and the livestock industry. Chicken and pork are especially vulnerable, because over 50% of their costs of their inputs go into feed. One of the areas that the government of Barbados has looked to address this has been through the new agricultural water rate. You would recall in the 2022 budget speech by our Prime Minister, we would have now introduced a new flat agricultural rate for water, which takes effect from the 1st of May, and farmers who are registered with the ministry could take advantage of that, because that water rate now reduces their costs. For those farmers who were using BWA water, which would have been at the time a starting point of $4.60, now that rate is a flat rate, which is now $1.80. So what this means for farmers is that you are reducing their water rate by about 60% in the first instance. And if they would have used more than the initial tier, I think it was about 40 cubic meters, then it would have escalated up to about $7 a cubic meter. So the measure that I think would be most beneficial for farmers at this point would be for those farmers who are registered to send in the forms. They're online on the ministry's website. Everything is digital, to be able to access the agricultural water rate that has been now put in place as a measure in which we can alleviate some of the increasing costs from the price of feed.
That's just some, though. And when we look at this price of feed, there are some other things that we will get into tonight, hopefully, that could help alleviate, because we've had those discussions right here on TV. But let me bring you in now, James. Tell us what you've been hearing over the last week or so. We had a chat early this week, early last week. It's a new week now as we start on Sunday. But we had that discussion on last Sunday and then on Tuesday, just trying to get some feedback from farmers to hear what they were saying. And you also spoke in another section of the media to say, that there will be some delays in the increase because that there were some, for instance, poultry, some birds that were fed on the old feed prices, so consumers wouldn't pay just yet. When will consumers see the price increase expected? When will that happen?
First of all, good night to listeners and good night, Shane. Happy Mother's Day to everyone. In terms of when, we're talking about 6 to 7 weeks in terms of but it might be earlier because, for instance, now every week from here on, and farmers are paying the new prices, and depends from here on in when those birds go into market. But there will be a measure of flexibility. There might be a tiered approach. I do not know how the processors will actually start in terms of valuing the birds, but they will, I think you will see an incremental approach in most cases, with the individual producers making up their minds as to when they're actually going to have an increase in price. The thing is really that I know in the past what we have had are that some producers have really tried to hold in terms of prices because they do face competition. And I think that is what you will see. So it's difficult to say, but I think probably you're looking at a maximum of 7 weeks or so, after which, of course, I think producers will come to a decision as to the extent of the increases that consumers are likely to see.
Some people have gone to the supermarket and they're saying they're already seeing the increase in price or prices for even poultry products. Are you hearing that as well, James?
But I've been doing some shopping myself. I haven't seen anything as yet. And what we try to do is to check the major supermarket chains to see what's been happening. But no doubt, there are some supermarkets that might, and some persons who retail poultry might want to say, well, this is an opportunity that may increase it. We have no control over that, and that's something that the industry in itself, that's all it will be.
Well, this is where I want to welcome in Pro Cage, because after doing a story on the morning report about Pro Cage and their liquid probiotics and how they've helped some farmers here in Barbados to reduce the feed that they're using by 40%. And if you're reducing the feed that you're using by 40%, you're definitely saving. Talk to us a bit about Pro Cage. How did it come about? And where are you at now? And what are you trying to help farmers achieve?
Hi, good night, Shane. Good night, viewers. Happy Day to all the mothers. I hope you all had a great day. ProCage has been around for the last 18 months. We have been we are distributed in Massey in Farm and Garden, Massey major distributor. We can be found in Farm and Garden and in Robert's Feed Store. What we have tried to do, we have tried to reduce the feed costs. Now, for the last 4 months, we have worked with both large and small poultry farmers, and some good results. As Ms. Keely Holder stated, as it relates to economies of scale, obviously the larger farmers will have more savings, whereas the smaller farmers would see savings as well, but not up to the 40%. So we have worked with a farm called SA Farms. Their initial feed cost was $873 for 300 broilers, which was 4 bags of starter, 13 bags of gruel. Now with the use of the ProCage Poultry Probiotics, is now $650. We have reduced the feed usage to 2.5 bags of starter and 9 bags of gruel. This is a savings of over $200, which represents 25% to that particular farm. So we have done tests, we have done trials, we are in the field actively working with the farmers to provide a solution to lower feed costs.
Sounds good. It sounds good on paper, and it sounds good as you have tested it with some farmers as well. $200 plus. That's a good saving there when you look at the ratios. Keely, this is where I want you to come back in because this is, you mentioned the water rates being a part of the solution. Here's ProCage offering what seems to be a solution as well. And we sat in I think a biology or chemistry class together. You stuck with it. It was not my calling. Talk to us about these liquid probiotics. What are they? How can they work? Do you need to be worried about it as a consumer? Because people are always talking about side effects, possible growth hormones. Tell us how probiotics work as the expert.
Yes, Shane. The thing about probiotics, we as consumers, we've heard a lot about it recently in the last, I'd say, decade or so, and how it improves in our bodies, our gut flora and fauna, our gut flora, sorry, how it improves our digestive systems, things like that. Now, when you think about it in terms of animals, it's the same thing. Our capacity to digest food, to improve the absorption of nutrients, things like that, would be impacted by what is going on in our gut. And having good bacteria in our gut will lead to improved digestive system. So similarly, it's the same for animals. The healthier their gut system is, and if you think about it, they say the gut is our second immune system, so to speak. So the better is that in terms of having a good gut flora, that will improve then the animal's ability to convert the feed that they are ingesting, and in so doing they're able to reduce the amount of feed that they need to use. So probiotics are absolutely a good idea. We at the ministry think that we'd like to see more of it, and not just in terms of poultry, but these types of what we call effective microorganisms. That's actually the term that is used in the industry. Effective microorganisms have been shown not only in livestock now, but also in crops to improve the uptake of nutrients as well. And so this is also what we consider to be a biostimulant, something that would stimulate the biology of the animal, of the plants, and improve the uptake of nutrients by the organisms. So this is part of an entire system. Now, if you think about it, let me just kind of break it down for you. When we would take organic matter, things like cow dung and same thing, chicken dung, and you put it on the you mix it into your soil. And in the old time days in gardening, we would do a lot of that. That
Right.
also would have a good bacteria that would aid, so that soil organic matter has in some of the good organisms, those effective microorganisms that would help then in the uptake of nutrients in the soil. So what Procage and other companies like Procage are doing is that they are now bringing it in a formulation that makes it easy for the farmers to use, and at the concentrations again that makes it maximum effective for them. So I certainly would support any type of initiative like this. Obviously it comes with a cost, but the trade-off between the cost of the feed versus the cost of a biostimulant is something that each farmer must weigh. But invariably you can see increases in efficiencies for I'd say a large majority of farmers using systems such as this.
So the fact that the animals are growing a bit faster, I'm talking about the poultry, the livestock, is that a concern, or is that okay because the gut health has been improved?
Well, I don't know that they indicated that the animals were growing faster. They indicated that they were using less feed.
Okay.
So let's hear from Procage on the growth of the animals first of all.
Yeah, Julieann, so let me hear from you. What can you tell me about the growth rate of the animals using the Procage liquid probiotic?
Right, with SA farms, eco farms as well, what we found is that flock uniformity in the birds at 5.5 weeks was fairly even, meaning we got birds at 3.6 pounds dead weight throughout the entire batches. So it is not the birds don't mature any faster. Birds mature at certain growth rates. However, you were able to kill, SA Farms was able to kill those 3 or 4 batches that we tested Procage with at 5.5 weeks. So that saved them an additional 3 days worth of feed. So you have an additional saving there. So usually in poultry farms, you pull twice. So this means you go to the processing plant twice with one batch. What SA Farms was able to do was to kill all of the birds at one time because of the usage of the poultry probiotic.
So I just want to be clear. I just want to be absolutely clear. Do the birds grow faster in a shorter amount of time?
We have found that the birds mature at 5 weeks, 3 days. Usually the industry standard is 6 weeks.
Right.
So you are saving 4 days. You are coming to market with 4 days less feed usage.
And
So
any savings is good. Right now, you take what you get.
Correct. Any savings is good.
All right, listen, we got a lot to talk about here on the show. We're going to talk a bit more about some other solutions. Hopefully we can find some to save consumers. But we'll take a break. Remember, callers, you can chime in to those numbers to call, 228-5562, 228-5563 with your questions or comments. Just share them here with us on the People's Business as we speak about agriculture and cost cutting at the level of the farmer. Back with you on the People's Business as we discuss agriculture and some cost-cutting measures for farmers. James, you have had a chance to hear the Ministry, of course, the Ministry of Agriculture through Keely, the Chief Agricultural Officer, and you've also had the opportunity to hear from Julieann as well, putting forward the argument for this liquid probiotic. What are your thoughts on employing the use of a liquid probiotic for farmers to help cut some of the costs and hopefully deal with that before it gets to the end of the consumer? Because we know once the price goes up, normally it's not coming back down.
Well, first of all, the issue of probiotics is not new. And actually, there's another product, I can't remember its name right now, but that was used before to help to increase the effectiveness of the feed. So that's one of the things, I don't think we talk about something new, but certainly the fact that we have a local product which is available to farmers in respect of helping the animals themselves to convert the feed, that is something, it's good. By the way, it also does not mean that if you did one sample that we can apply across the stream, because it does not, at the same time, not diminish the need on the part of the farmers to exercise extreme vigilance and care in terms of the management of their operations. Because, a lot of the results depend really on the level of management at the individual enterprise, the need to observe good management practices, good animal husbandry. All of that is required. So, in other words, when you see the result, it has to be that your management has to be good in terms of the whole quest of managing your flocks, ensuring, of course, that you manage disease on the farm if there's any, and watch out for anything, because in a sense, yes, it addresses one aspect, but it is not going to address every other aspect too at the same time.
Government addressing water rates for farmers was also a big move. Do you think that it went far enough to help curb some of the input costs?
Let me just say that over the last 5 years, farms have had to face a tremendous increase in costs overall. I think that when we begin to understand that there are some products that have increased for farmers by over 200%, you begin to understand the extent of the increase in the cost inputs that farmers have had to face. So we have talked about the water. We thought water was critical from the point of view that, moving water from where it was up to some farmers were paying as much as $9 in some cases. It was critical that we have that particular issue addressed, because what we saw is a tremendous increase, the doubling of water bills in some cases and tripling in some cases of water bills. And I think that the fact that that has been addressed, that is a significant cost factor for farmers, and in this environment, it needed to be addressed. But there are other cost factors, so we have to look at the overall viability of farming operations, and the fact that there are a number of cost ingredients that have increased, but supplements, for instance, is something that we have to pay attention to. Those would have increased over the period. Certainly, all of those things we have to look at. So yes, I think it was critical that we bring down the cost of water. That has happened. But for instance, even in relation to locally diesel and the price of electricity, farming operations also do use huge amounts of power. And the fact that, for instance, right now diesel has gone up. And remember again that we are actually competing with other imported products, because one of the things that has happened to, and we are seeing, and I just want to mention that, is that we have products coming in from other countries which are subsidized, and which, even if they are not subsidized, producers in those other countries face lower cost of operations than Barbadian producers. So they end up at a significant advantage to local producers, and that is an issue. So it is not in itself a panacea, not solve all the farmers' problems. But certainly, I believe that yes, that reduction in the cost of water will actually help.
Interesting. Keely, do you think that we are getting put to a position now where we're putting farmers in a corner where we are outpricing, or where they're unable to compete with some of the products that are being imported? And I want you to remember that question for me. We do have a caller on the line, and I really don't want to keep them waiting. Let them getting their question or comment first. So good night, caller. Welcome to the People's Business. What's your question or comment?
Hello, good night. I'm calling to find out or to suggest if it could be possible that a barter system be introduced between produce farmers and the livestock farmers. You know, whether it be like a special discount on the potatoes and what's not, because my great grandmother would have had her livestock what's not, and she would have fed them ground food and what's not. And you know, you would hear various people talking about the river tampering and what's not. So I was wondering if the produce farmers could offer a special rate to the farmers, you know, so that like if they can get their produce sell off fast enough that the livestock farmers could buy their produce, or if they could introduce like a bartering system, whereas like if you want to like say for instance get a certain weight of produce for a certain weight of manure and what's not, to see if that could help cut down some of the costs, or like say for instance if commercial farmers are not getting their stuff sell off, if they could give their produce to the livestock farmers in exchange, you know, for like meat or what's not. Could that be something?
Good question. Thank you, caller, for that. So a bartering system of sorts, where if your fruits or your produce is going bad, you can offer it to livestock farmers. That could add to the feed. Keely, can something like that work?
Yes, and I think that we do see some of that happening already. I know of farmers who will go into livestock farmers who work with crop farmers, for example, to go and harvest potatoes and things like that out of the field. Um, of course, this is not always something that can consistently be done. It's really dependent on what's going on with the crop markets at the time. Um, Again, if there are opportunities for farmers to barter and work with each other in that way, obviously, we would want to encourage it. And I do see pockets of collaboration like this within the industry. So yes, that is, again, that's an option. But I think what we need to look at, Shane, is across the sector, more significant changes that need to be made that will make a bigger dent in some of the issues. Because as I said, inputs become, you know, a significant part of the cost in crop production and in livestock production. And so there needs to be a number of strategies that farmers will need to take depending on their industry to be able to reduce their costs.
Okay, we do have another caller on the line. The call's coming in fast and furious. Good night, caller. Welcome to the People's Business. What's your question? Hello, good night. Welcome to the People's Business. Okay, we seem to have lost that caller. Uh, I was asking you something else, Keely, about, and I want to frame my question in a different way. There are a number of farmers here in Barbados that over the years have been doing things in an inefficient way. And I guess you could say they are making some mistakes. There's some more efficient ways with the advent of technology. What are some of the mistakes that farmers have been making that you and your team at the Ministry of Agriculture want them to correct to improve the efficiency to help bring down some of the high costs of their inputs and their labor?
I wouldn't go with the language that farmers are making mistakes. I'd want to say that, the industry has been hard hit for, I would say, the last 40 years. And so, as you've seen a decline in the industry, you've also seen farmers get creative in cutting corners every time to, again, keep prices down to the consumer. And part of that cutting corners every time means that there are things that the farmers then they don't have the resources to be able to do to improve what it is that they're doing. Now, if we take, for example, livestock farmers, for example, one of the key areas which needs some attention is the quality of the forages which are being grown in our pastures. We do have a lot of pasture land available in Barbados, but as one farmer said to me, the grass is like butt stickets. It really doesn't have a lot of nutritional value.
Okay.
So, we are seeing again in the livestock industry, this would be for dairy as well as for sheep production as well as beef cows, improvement in the quality of the grasses and the legumes that are being grown could lead to as much as I'd say about 30-40% increase in the quality of milk that's being produced, in the amount of milk that's being produced, in the size of the carcass of animals that are being grown. So something as simple as that, and it would also require fertilization of the grasses as well. Again, if the soils are poor, the grasses are poor, they're nutritionally very poor, and so the animals then don't have enough to eat. And think about it, it's like if you feed a human ramen, you get belly full, but what is the nutritional quality of ramen? So likewise, it's not just giving the animal grass, but it's giving it quality forage to eat that will make a big difference. That is a key thing that can help farmers to reduce the amount of feed that they're consuming. So being able to do that is a key area that they could improve. Additionally, on the crop ends, if we're looking at crop farmers, now there are a number of things that go into the process. Increasing organic matter in the soil reduces the amount of water that they have to use, improves the soil health, improves nutrient uptake. These things would reduce the amount of fertilizer that they have to use as well. So having that organic matter, and in tropical soils, our organic matter breaks down very quickly in about 5 years of intensive crop production. So if we're not replenishing the soil, then we are going to see a decrease in productivity. If you think about it, you look at soils now being plowed. Years ago, you would see a lot of birds behind the tractors. Now you're not seeing that earthworm activity, so you're not seeing the birds. So that lack of soil organic matter is reducing things like earthworms that help improve the soil in that regard. Then, as it relates to reducing other costs such as pesticides, healthy plants are like healthy humans. So, once you ensure that your plants are getting nutrition balance, a combination of fertilizer, and again, the best combination is a combination of organic matter as well as inorganic fertilizers, that would increase then the uptake. But once you have healthy plants, it means they don't get as sick as often, so they don't need as much pesticide to be able to do that. So that could reduce your fertilizer costs, your water costs, your pesticide costs. Those are the three big inputs for crop farmers, just by increasing the soil organic matter, doing your soil test, following the soil test results in terms of replenishing the soil with the correct type of nutrients. Those would be key areas that they would want to start. The other big area that they also need to focus on is post harvest losses. So farmers are excellent at producing the best crops, but without good post harvest storage, even things like reducing field heat, for every hour that you leave your crops out in the heat and you don't remove that field heat, you actually lose 1 day of shelf life. So
Mm.
it's not only growing your crop, but you need to make sure you sell it before it spoils, and you need to make sure that you maintain it in the best conditions. So removing field heat is a key way to extend the shelf life for the product, which means that you can get more of it sold. So what you see in developed countries is that as much as 55% of crops that are grown are not sold, and they're lost to post harvest losses as a result of not getting that field heat out and not having the right cooling facilities to be able to do that. So those would be some top areas that you could see improvements in, and reductions in cost, improvements in output and productivity. So those would be some areas to start.
It would be interesting to hear. I don't know if you have the statistics, but the amount of crop loss to field heat here in Barbados. But we can discuss this and other matters after this break. We'll be back in a moment. Before the break, we were talking about some of those areas that farmers can improve upon, both on the crop farming side and the poultry and animal livestock farming side, to improve the efficiency with which they operate, with the help of course, the Chief Agricultural Officer, Keely Holder. We do have a caller on the line. Let's go back to the phone lines. Good night, caller. Welcome to the People's Business. What's your question?
Hey, good night, Shane, and to the other speakers. I just wanted to ask two questions as it pertains to the ProCage poultry probiotics. Currently, I have been using the probiotics, and I find that they are working very well. My mortality rate has been reduced significantly. And I was just wondering, because I visit the Massey stores and the other stores, and I find that the bottles are a bit small, and I wanted to know if there are larger bottles or containers even that persons could buy, as well as I wanted to know if you guys would be available at seminars such as AgriFest that will be coming up. Also, I wanted to know if this is a locally made product that it could be readily available. So, if possible, I would like the ProCage person to answer this question. Thank you.
Well, Julieann, that question is directed to you. Will you be at AgroFest this year? And it seems as if people just need to be educated about the use of these probiotics. So, will ProCage be at AgroFest?
Yes, please. We will be at AgroFest this year. And to answer the caller's three questions, the product is locally manufactured, meaning that it's fresh, shelf stable for up to 6 months. The next question was if it's available in larger sizes. Currently, most of the stores stock the 1 liter. However, we do have a 1 gallon that should be available in farm and garden. From tomorrow, I promise the caller I will make sure that we ensure the larger bottles are available to you. But I look forward to meeting you at AgroFest. Hopefully, we can team up with the Ministry of Agriculture and the BAS to do some series of seminars for poultry, livestock farmers to educate them in terms, as Mr. Paul said, in terms of sanitation of the pens, in terms of reducing mortality, good farming practices. Hopefully, in the near future, we at ProCage will be invited to such seminars.
We do have another caller on the line. Good night, caller. Welcome to the People's Business. What's your question?
Good night to all. Hello?
Hi, good night. Welcome to the People's Business.
I have two questions.
Go
I
ahead.
want to know, can probiotic cause infection in human beings? And I want to know what are the different types of probiotic used in the chicken feed. What are the different types of probiotic?
Okay, Keely, I'll let you handle that question.
In terms of probiotics causing infections in human beings.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I can't say that I've ever heard of it. As I said, typically probiotics are used to improve our bodies, but I'm not sure what the scientific research says on that. As it relates to probiotics for animals, again we'd have to see what they are, but typically these are considered to be good microorganisms, so I wouldn't expect that. As it relates to what are the different types of probiotics in the feed are for ProCage, I think that I'd hand that over to ProCage so they can provide more information.
Okay, well, before we get to that, I want James to follow up on something that you were saying, Keely, about some of the practices that can be improved for farmers to help them cut some of these costs. James, what are you seeing with some of your members? What are some of the areas where efficiency can be improved? And there's something that I know that you want more of your farmers doing, which is using photovoltaic systems to cut down some of the energy bill. Are you seeing that? Are they taking up the use of photovoltaic systems and solar systems to reduce their energy bill with these rising diesel prices?
But first of all, let us understand that whatever opportunities are available, improvements in technology or otherwise, that are available to farming businesses, they improve their operations, they will do it. And I don't think that they need to be told, this is, if it's going to save the money, implement it. They will implement it almost immediately. The challenge in terms of the photovoltaic operations is this, that, you have to go through a Ministry of Agriculture who basically, or not agriculture, sorry, you have to go through a process in terms of, and that has nothing to do with the Ministry of Agriculture, sorry, but you have to go through a process for applying to install photovoltaic systems on your farms. And that process is taking extremely long. And as I said before, I believe that farming enterprises should be fast-tracked when it comes to the use of photovoltaic applications, and that they should be given preference over other applications that have absolutely no connection with farming at all. In that way, of course, what you do, you reduce the cost of operating a processing and operation or even a farm. And not only that, one of the things and the benefits that overseas operators of photovoltaic facilities do is that they came in and they provided farms with extra revenues. And that is something, and I think that carefully, when we look at it carefully, if we're going to have an advantage such as this, where, in a sense, the government is already giving incentives to those persons who are actually implementing these photovoltaic operations. If we are serious about food security, I believe that those incentives should be given to the most sensitive, what we call the sensitive areas of our economy. And certainly, agriculture is one, because we're talking about products that are treated as sensitive in terms of trading negotiations or whatever. And if we can find ways of making the operation of those enterprises more profitable, let us do it. Let us fast track it. And I'm insisting, and I am saying, that in a sense, the farming sector needs to be given front of center attention in terms of the installation of photovoltaic panels. That should be a no-brainer. And those applications that are coming in from persons who have no connection with the farming sector, who don't even have a farming enterprise associated with them, should really be put on the back burner. I just want to make that very clear. Because if we are talking about trying to keep our farming operations viable, if we are serious about food security, we want to ensure that, for instance, that in the face of the fact that our farmers here right now are facing a lot of competition, even still from imported products, and also because of the fact that we are seeing increases in the cost of products. I mean, for instance, a product as something as milk replacer, which is used, for instance, in cows, have moved from something like what it was before in early days. It was $36 or so. That is over now, it's over $100 now, and still climbing. And we are hearing from our suppliers that they cannot guarantee as to where the price would end up. And this is just one product that we are talking about. So, in other words, in this whole discussion that we are having in terms of the viability of farms and the ability to stay afloat, we have to recognize that they are facing certain moving pieces in terms of prices for individual inputs, which, yes, you try to control and you want to try to be efficient, but with the best of intentions, you cannot control all of them. And I'm glad you raised the point about diesel. Because on an earlier point, I think which the Chief Agricultural Officer mentioned just now, in relation, say, to the use of, products, vegetable matter in terms of for livestock consumption. Remember this: most of the normal genetics that we deal with, modern genetics that we deal with today, require a stable feed source in terms of the composition of it. They want a particular mix in terms of the amount of protein it contains, fat, all of these things. So you just can't, as in the old days, in the old days, what we used to do when we fed pigs, we just throw things in the pen and we say, well, that is good for it and that is cool. A lot of these animals now today, you can't do that with. Because in a sense, what you're doing sometimes, it affects, you just can't change the diet just like that. Because you must have, the animal must receive a certain balance in terms of its nutrition. That is how it is now. We have gone on in terms of technology. So, but the point is, where it is possible, we are going to try to do it. And it is not that farmers themselves are not looking for alternatives. They are not looking for ways in which they could actually save that money to make themselves more viable. But I think that sometimes the listening public out there, maybe some of them are operating too much in the past in many cases, or they just do not recognize the importance of research or backup for these farmers that they really need in order to ensure that they can implement new things in order to make the businesses viable.
I was asking there, James, if pigs don't now in these times eat any and everything still. But I guess the answer to that question is definitely no. You have to,
right.
They have to change the diet.
The point is really that we need a stable nutrition mix. For instance, even in sheep, one of the things that we did before, I remember that we did before, we actually were looking at alternatives of using local inputs in terms of, say, feeding sheep. But you need a feed mix that is constant. That for instance, it's not about throwing things at animals in a pen. You need a feed source that is stable, that you don't change it on the animal, because when that happens, sometimes what happens, the animal goes off of it. They don't want to eat it. All of these things we have to consider. And all I'm saying is, at the same time, and maybe even what is most critical now for the industry is support. Is support in terms of, the question is that how can we combine our best researchers here, even within the ministry or university or whatever, in helping farmers to find alternative ingredients, even in that regard, that can work, but make sure, of course, that they are stable in terms of producing that material at a cost that at least ensures that we have viability and the animals that actually consume it. And in a sense, that is where sometimes we need to work very closely. I've advocated that with our feed company here, because very often, sometimes we're discussing these things and things are being tried. But you must look at the commercial feasibility of the options that are actually being provided to farmers, and don't assume that at the same time that, as I said, in the old days, you can throw anything at these in some cases, birds or the pigs or the sheep or the cows, and they will actually eat it. It is just not that way on this occasion, because if you're trying to be efficient, you have to be on top of the game when it comes to animal nutrition.
I want to talk about possible rebates for farmers, Keely. were there any rebates for farmers coming from the Ministry of Agriculture, and if you can tell me what are they, and are farmers taking advantage of them?
Um, Shan, we would need a whole program to talk about all the rebates that we have for farmers. Um, because there are a number of rebates that have been available for farmers now, going back more than a decade. In terms of crop farmers, we have rebates for irrigation systems. This is one of the rebates that's most accessed by farmers. Farmers can get a rebate of 50% on the cost of establishing an approved irrigation and mulching system up to a maximum of $60,000. This has actually been in place since 1999. We have other rebates around irrigation as well. We do have rebates for land clearing and cultivation. That has also been a rebate that is accessed quite a lot by farmers. We provide a once for all rebate of $1,000 per hectare for land clearing, and we also provide a rebate for cultivation on lands per acre for things such as furrowing and harrowing, plowing, rotivating, and subsoiling. Um, we have rebates for spraying and weed control of up to 50% to a maximum of $800 on the purchase of spraying equipment. And for tractor mounted spraying equipment, this is up to $2,000. We also have rebates on agricultural and agro-processing machinery, a rebate of 18% on the purchase of agricultural and agro-processing machinery. Another way that farmers could look to increase their incomes by going into agro-processing. Um, and we also have rebates for livestock farmers. Um,
Mm-hmm.
on that end, we have a rebate for 50% for the components of an approved environmental control system for poultry and livestock facilities to a maximum of $25,000. Um, in terms of dairy housing, a rebate of 25% for the components of that up to a maximum of $40,000. Rebates on components for milking parlors as well. Um, and there, as I said, there are a number of rebates that we do have for farmers. We have farm security. You can get a maximum of $10,000 off on a farm security system, or 50% of the cost of it, whichever is lesser. Um, and so there are tremendous amount of rebates that we have here. Those are some of the key ones that we see used a lot. In terms of greenhouses and hydroponics, you can get a rebate of 40% on the cost of components of greenhouses and hydroponic systems, up to a maximum of $30,000, to stimulate investment in such technologies. Likewise, for things like fabric mulch, you can get a rebate for up to 30% as well, to a maximum of $2,000 per hectare. So we have a number of rebates, and what we like to do is to invite farmers either to visit our website at agriculture.gov.bb and go on our resources section, and they'll be able to see the types of rebates that we have available. Um, or likewise, if you don't have the internet and you want to come in and visit with an officer in our services unit, you're welcome to do that. So there are a number of rebates that we have available to farmers. But having said that, just so that you're aware, typically in a given year, our budget is just under $1 million in terms of rebates that we issue. So we have a number of rebates, but we are limited in terms of our annual budget of about $1 million.
So we need more money to help really know to cut those costs so they don't reach the consumer. Well, I understand, but we'll take a quick break here. We still have a few more minutes on the show right here on the People's Business as we talk about agriculture and cost cutting at the level of the farmer. So we'll come back and get some final comments and then wrap up today's edition. we had a wealth of discussion here on the People's Business as we really dug into what is happening in the agriculture sector with these increasing costs of inputs, but still trying to help farmers cut some costs so that a lot of it does not roll on to the consumer, and giving us their side of the story, telling us how they're looking to help farmers. We had Keely Holder, the Chief Agricultural Officer, James Paul, the Chief Executive Officer with the Barbados Agricultural Society, and Julieann Johnson, the Public Relations Officer of ProCage. I want to give everyone roughly a minute just to give some final comments about looking forward. How do we really help those stakeholders in the agriculture sector, especially the farmers, help the consumers to save some money? Let's all save some money. So I want to start with Julieann from ProCage to talk about what the company is looking to do going forward. Are you looking at some workshops, some seminars to educate farmers in the use of these probiotics to really help them maximize, what they could save on their bottom line? What next for ProCage?
Firstly, we would love to have a meeting with the Minister of Agriculture, Miss Keely Holder, and key stakeholders in the industry, as we would like to have some meaningful discussion about charting the way forward. What do we do next? How can ProCage assist in securing food security in Barbados? Because food security is paramount. Today's headline, the front of today's Sunday Sun, we are seeing that the article at the front is discussing food concerns. How can ProCage help assist with food security in the livestock sector? Because we know that in the last couple of weeks, we have heard about a poultry shortage in the island. So for us at ProCage, we're going to continue actively working with our farmers. For any farm out there that needs help, you can reach us at 247-8836. You can find us on IG at ProCage Supply. And you can feel free to reach out to us, send us a WhatsApp, shoot us a DM. We will be pleased to work with you as you continue to improve your farm and include technology in your farming.
James, I have been hearing about this poultry shortage. I think this will be your final comment on the show to talk about that. What are we seeing? I'm pretty sure that I heard a number of friends go to some fast food outlets, call for chicken, and they had to wait. Is this a part of the shortage? What was going on there?
Just want to start from where you began. You said that they went to food outlet, called for chicken, and have to wait. I mean, they probably had to take some time cooking it, but it's somewhere in the back there. But the other point I wish to make, though, I am not aware of a poultry shortage. I just want to make that very clear. We monitor, and I think somehow this week we'll be getting the figures for last month. We monitor on a constant basis what are the placements of chicks on a monthly basis, and we have been keeping pace. And I think that we need to recognize really that, we've seen on the international market, we have seen some changes, and we have had to operate within there. And I think that we should compliment the industry for still, despite all of the challenges, being able to supply the volumes that they continue to supply. What we are seeing in some cases is just that some individual suppliers are experiencing problems, and in terms of that, some of the buyers actually change the demands last minute on some suppliers. And it is not like you are going to a shop really where you have the thing stock and you can just say, but give me that or give me that. And I think that we need to have a level of cooperation and understanding by the persons who are buying chicken. And of course, the other thing is that some of these players don't even keep stock of the product. So, I think we need to recognize that. Let us understand that the reason why we are seeing some people without chicken is not the fault of the poultry producers, but rather because of the fact that the buying practices of some of the producers does not help it at all. And it does not help the case when you have a situation where you want it immediately and you can't get it. It is not something that you can just take it off a supermarket shelf.
Keely, what is the Ministry of Agriculture working on, hopefully in the very near future, in terms of education and just helping farmers on the ground? Anything in the works?
We are looking at improving the services that we're providing to farmers in terms of technical assistance, information that they can use on their farm to improve their productivity. We're looking to ramp up in terms of the applied research that would again help farmers to know, like for example, how to reduce the amount of inputs that they're using. At which point is it a sunk cost? Are they getting no returns on investment? So we want to see them improve their productivity by providing them with more information that can help them to make better decisions. Also, in terms of doing research that would help them to reduce the amount of on-farm costs because they have to do their on-farm R&D. On the competitive side, we're also working with them to try and foster stronger interactions within the industry because there's opportunity to lower costs by just greater collaboration between the farmers as well as the producers, the processors, etc. And there may be opportunities as well to collaborate to create economies of scale, which would help them to improve their competitiveness. The last thing that I also want to say is that while we're talking about all this, let's not just talk about lowering costs, but we also don't want to lower costs at the risk of reducing quality. And nutritional quality of food is important. And so, what the farmers are doing to lower costs, we can't be in a position where we are just looking at price, and farmers then in an attempt to do that they reduce the nutritional quality going to the consumer, because again it's like eating bus tickets. It's really not worth it. So we want to ensure that we support our local farmers because we know that they're going to be producing highly nutritious, fresh, quality food for Barbadians.
I really want to thank you for participating in the edition of the People's Business. You really gave some insight for farmers and really for everyone in general about what's going on and how we take that next step to address some of these price increases, but also to make sure that what we're getting is fresh and nutritious. Thank you, Keely. Thank you, James. Thank you, Julieann. And thank you, viewers, for watching another edition of the People's Business. Tonight we focused on agriculture and cost cutting at the level of the farmer. That's our time. I'm Shane Seeley. Good night. And again, happy Mother's Day to all mothers out there.